The empty village asterisk, there was no ceremony, only mourning. The forest held its breath as Ananda stood outside his hut for the last time. The thatched roof, the smoothed stone at the threshold, the Bodhi tree that had once shaded his grief and now only mirrored his calm, all remained still. He bowed to each, not out of sentiment, but out of completion. He no longer belonged to the place, and it no longer belonged to him. His staff touched the earth gently as he stepped onto the trail, not as a man leaving home, but as a breeze leaving a branch. The path that had once been worn by his daily walks to the river now led away from it, northward, toward what locals called the Forgotten Range. Few went that way. There were rumors, always, of wolves, of landslides, of bandits, of ghosts, but none of those frightened Ananda. He had already lost more terrifying things: expectation, identity, meaning. What could bandits take that impermanence hadn't already unwrapped? The terrain changed quickly. What began as soft dirt under sandal turned to pebble, then stone, then old road fractured by roots and moss. Trees thinned into brush, the air thinned to drier, higher, but still cradled by the wind. By midday, clouds swept in, and the sun played shy behind their shoulders. Ananda walked steadily, neither fast nor slow. He watched every bird. He nodded. At every broken fence post. He bowed slightly to a fallen log, not in superstition, but in recognition. Each thing, like him, was passing through. By late afternoon, the land opened into a wide, sloping field, wild grass up to his waist, golden in the slanting light. Beyond it, barely visible at the foot of a rising hill, stood the outline of a settlement, ruined rooftops, a leaning bell tower, and something else, something less visible but unmistakable, the feeling of absence. He paused, the wind shifted, and with it came the faintest sound, like a distant chime, or perhaps the echo of memory itself. He walked. The first building was nothing more than a frame, timbers, greyed by sun and silence. Next, a house with half a roof, a door swinging in the wind like a tongue trying to speak what the walls had forgotten. He passed an overgrown well, a stone oven with no fire, a rusted prayer wheel, spun only by weather. No dogs barked, no voices called. Even the insects seemed reverent here. The village was not dead. It was listening. Ananda reached what had once been the square, a flat expanse of packed earth, surrounded by broken homes, open sheds, and silence. In its center, a banyan tree grown wild, its roots breaking the stone beneath it, its trunk twisted, like a spine remembering its own past lives. He sat beneath it, not to rest, but to see, and what he saw was the space. Between things, between stones, between walls, between breaths. This was not abandonment. It was what remained when story left. He did not ask who had lived here, or why they had gone, or if they had suffered. He only listened, and in that listening, he felt the faintest pulse, not of fear, not of danger, but of something waiting, something that had not spoken in a long, long time. Night came without question. Ananda built no fire. He drank no tea. He lay beside the old banyan tree, hands folded over his belly, eyes turned toward a sky heavy with stars. And for the first time in years, he felt fully alone. Not because there were no people, but because there were no reflections of himself to reach for. The bowl was gone. The river was far. The hut was behind him, and still. He did not feel lost. He felt empty, and the emptiness no longer frightened him. It welcomed him, like a house with no door, only space. He closed his eyes. The wind moved gently through the broken village, whispering through cracks and leaves, and somewhere far off, or deep within, a bell rang once, softly, as if marking a beginning, not an end. Ananda awoke before dawn, not from sound, but from the absence of it. It was a stillness so complete, so thick, it felt like a blanket pressed against the world. Even the birds had not yet found their voices. Even the winds seemed uncertain whether to return. He sat up slowly beneath the banyan tree, the night still clinging to his robes, the scent of cold earth rising around him. No dreams had visited him, only presence, and now he would begin to walk. Among what remained, the village did not greet him. It received him like an old friend who had nothing more to say. He stepped carefully between the worn cobbles of the main lane. Grass had burst through many of them. Time always found its way in dot to his left. A shrine had collapsed inward, its roof fallen like a monk in prostration. The statue at its center, once proud and seated, was now headless. The torso still wrapped in rusted offerings, copper bells, faded cloth, a cracked rosary swallowed by vine dot to his right, a row of small homes with open windows, their frames warped, like mouths stuck mid-breath. Inside, silence. Not decay, just stillness. Each home felt paused, not abandoned, as if the people had stepped outside for a moment and never returned. He entered one. Dust swirled, but did not flee. A wooden cup sat on a table, half filled with rainwater that had found its way in through the broken roof. A robe still hung from a peg. A child's toy, carved from bone, rested neatly by the door. No signs of panic, no signs of flight, only echoes of routine, as if emptiness itself had moved in and made everything neat again. He exited quietly, bowing slightly as he passed through. The doorway, not to the house, but to whoever had once called it home. It felt sacred now, not because of what was present, but because of what WASN single quotes. Further down the lane, he passed a stone oven still blackened from fire. A cooking pot hung from an iron hook, untouched by time except for a single vine that had curled through its handle like a slow question. Beyond that, a well dot. He approached it. Peering down, water still shimmered far below, perfectly still, as if waiting for someone to ask something honest. He did not. Instead, he touched the rim of the well with his fingers and whispered, "I am listening." The wind answered with a single gust that moved his robe but left his breath unmoved. At the far end of the village, the lane narrowed. Ananda stepped between two stone archways, their tops broken and worn with moss. Behind them, a smaller cluster of buildings. These looked older, heavier, more intentional, perhaps once a center for gathering, or prayer, or silence. One structure stood out, a long, low building of stone with a wooden roof mostly intact despite the years. Its door hung open by a single hinge, creaking gently in the wind. Something called him there. Not a voice, not even a feeling, just direction. Inside, the light fell softly across the floor in dusty blades. There were mats, dozens of them, all arranged in rows, all still aligned, as if a group of practitioners had risen, bowed, and left in unison, but without disturbing a single thing. Along the far wall, a raised platform with a single unlit candle, long melted into its holder. On either side, scrolls hung, faded with age, but marked with faint strokes of ink. Not writing, not drawing, only gestures. Brushwork that looked like breath. Ananda did not speak. He did not step forward. He simply stood at the threshold, allowing the stillness of the place to envelop him. There was no ghost here, no memory screaming to be remembered, only silence, layered, breathing, vast. And at its center, an invitation for the next few hours. Ananda walked through the remaining quarters, a garden overgrown but strangely organized, as though nature had respected the symmetry of intention. A bathing area, with a cracked basin still holding rainwater and the scent of lavender long vanished. He sat there for a while, touching the stone with his fingers, eyes half-lidded, breath steady. Somewhere between blink and thought, he realized something subtle. He had not spoken since he arrived. Not a word, not to the village, not to himself, not even internally. And yet, the silence was not empty. It was speaking, not in answers, not in truths, but in something deeper, allowing, that evening, as dusk bled into the bones of the village. He returned to the banyan tree, but something stopped him, a sound, soft, deliberate, not wind, not bird, not thought. He turned and saw a child. Standing near the well, the child said nothing, only watched him with wide, unblinking eyes, not afraid, not curious, just present, like the village itself. Ananda did not move. The child lifted a hand, pointed not at him, but at a path leading away from the square, toward the hill beyond the village, then turned and walked. No words, no gesture to follow, but somehow Ananda knew he must. The path was narrow. It curled behind the banyan tree like a forgotten breath, not carved by carts or animals, but simply worn by time and occasional feet. As Ananda followed, he noticed that the child never looked back. Not once. The boy moved, with quiet certainty, feet bare, arms swinging gently at his sides. He seemed neither hurried nor slow. He simply went, as if he were following something older than memory. The hill was not steep, but steady. Every step lifted them a little farther from the village, a little closer to sky. Trees thinned, grass turned to dry moss. A single bird circled above them, cawing once, then gliding silently away. The wind grew colder here, sharper but not unkind. It carried with it the scent of stone at the crest of the hill. The child stopped. Before them stood a cell, a square structure of slate rock, no larger than 3 paces wide. Its door was wood, weathered to silver grey, marked by time but not decay. Moss climbed halfway up its walls. The roof sloped down with deliberate humility. There were no windows, no lanterns, no signs, only silence. The boy turned to Ananda for the first time. They held eye contact for a long moment, not as stranger and stranger, but as 2 parts of a story that had been waiting to remember itself. Then the child bowed, not deeply, not ceremonially, just enough, and he walked away. Ananda did not follow. He did not call out. He only turned back to the cell and entered. The air inside was cool and dry. A single mat lay in the center of the stone floor. A candle stub, long extinguished, rested on a clay dish, and against the far wall a small wooden chest, no larger than a beggar's pack. Ananda sat on the mat, cross-legged back. Straight. He did not move to open the chest. Not yet. Instead, he listened to the room, the way the stone breathed, the way silence pressed against the shape of things. This was not a room that asked for words. It was a room that knew better. He stayed there for what may have been an hour, or a breath. Then, gently, he leaned forward and opened the chest. Inside, a single bundle of cloth. Wrapped with twine, he lifted it. It was heavy, not in weight, but in intention. He placed it on the mat before him, and with slow hands, untied. The knot. The cloth unfolded to reveal a stack of handmade pages, worn but preserved. The ink faded in places. The paper yellowed, but the writing remained intact. The top page bore a single title, scrawled in a hand both elegant and raw, the last word. No author, no date, no preface. Just the beginning. He turned the page. Words are rivers, but some rivers do not want to flow. Another page. If silence could speak, it would say, "I've been waiting for you." Another. Before sound, there was listening. Before listening, there was presence. Each page contained a single line. No explanation, no context, like cones, like dreams, like echoes of a voice that had no mouth. Ananda read slowly, not with his mind, but with his breath. Each line felt less like information and more like invitation to sit a little deeper, to loosen the knot a little more. To speak is to cast a shadow. To be silent is to become light. He paused. Something stirred in his chest. Not emotion, not thought, but space, a widening. He continued. Pages passed like clouds. When the last word is spoken, what remains? A bowl breaks. But does emptiness shatter? What you call you is only the echo of what you haven't let go. He stopped again, closed his eyes. The words weren't answers. They were mirrors, and like all good mirrors, they reflected nothing except the one who looked. He opened his eyes. One final page lay. Beneath the others, it was blank at first. Then, as light shifted through a crack in the wall, faint ink revealed itself, almost invisible, like breath written in fog. The last word is not a word. Ananda exhaled, long, soft, and the room seemed to breathe with him. He gathered the pages, not to store them, but to bow to them. Then he let them rest on the mat, open to the wind. As he stepped outside, twilight had begun to fall again. The child was gone. The village below remained small, distant, silent, and above it all, stars were waking. Ananda stood at the edge of the hill, hands at his sides. No bowl, no staff, no name, and in the hollow of his chest, something sang, not with sound, not with meaning, only with being. Night pressed against the walls of the stone cell like a tide, not heavy, not cold, but complete. Inside, Ananda sat with the bundle of pages resting in his lap. The candle had long ago melted into a dry stub. He had not lit it. He didn't need to. The words glowed in silence. Not with light, but with something older, something underneath sound. He turned a page. A question is a door. But what if the house is already gone? He turned another. Do not confuse silence with absence. One is empty. The other is listening. Each phrase arrived like a bell with no hammer. Each word bent the air around it, not to be understood, but to be dissolved in time. Faded, thought slowed. There was no desire to analyze, no urge to remember. Even memory itself had begun to loosen, not disappear, but shift, like fog pulling back from a mountain that had never moved. He read. The first sound was a mistake, but a beautiful one. Before you seek wisdom, ask who is asking. The Buddha did not teach to be followed. He taught to be unneeded. Ananda exhaled. He realized he had not blinked in some time, or perhaps he had, but the blinking was not his. Outside, the wind moved through the bamboo like fingers brushing a sleeping harp. Inside, the silence had taken shape. It wrapped itself around the edges of the cell, and then around the edges of Ananda himself. He was no longer reading. The words were not on the page. They were within him. A line appeared. He did not remember turning. The page. You are not the one who reads. You are the space where reading happens. That line opened something. Not an emotion, not a vision, but a space. A vast, humming space. It was not empty. It was emptiness itself. Aware, breathing, watching. Ananda closed his eyes, and the words kept coming. Not in sound, not in thought, but like waves returning to the ocean, knowing they had never left. Then a memory arose, or perhaps a vision. He was sitting by the river again, but this time the bowl was not in his hands. It was floating above the water, spinning, not away, but in place. And inside the bowl, not food, not light, but letters. Thousands of them, made of ash and air, swirling inside like leaves in wind. They rose from the bowl, forming sentences he could not read, then unforming, then silence, then silence, then the bowl dissolved, not shattered, not sunk, simply ... ceased, and so did he. His body did not move, his breath did not move, and for one long moment, neither did time, when his eyes opened. He was still in the stone cell, still cross-legged, still whole, but not the same. The pages before him had shifted. The top one now read, "You have now reached the page that cannot be read." He did not try to turn it. Instead, he placed both hands over the text, felt the quiet beneath his palms, felt the warmth of nothingness, and he whispered, not aloud, but in stillness, "So this is the last word." It did not answer. It did not need to. Hours passed, or maybe moments. Eventually, Ananda gathered the pages again, not to possess, but to bless. He wrapped them in the cloth, tied the knot loosely, and placed the bundle back in the wooden chest. Then he bowed deeply to the mat, to the space, to the not knowing before sunrise. He stepped outside. The stars were still visible, like old seeds scattered across a field of sky. The air smelled of dew and slate, and in that liminal space between night and morning, Ananda whispered, "I no longer need to speak, but if I do, may it be from silence." He descended the hill. Slowly, the bundle left behind, the child unseen. The village waited below, but this time it no longer felt empty, it felt complete. The sky was shifting. Not yet morning, not still night, a grey in between, like the silence between two breaths. Ananda stepped lightly down the hill, each footfall soft against the earth, as if he didn't want to wake it. He expected, vaguely, to see the child waiting at the foot of the slope, or the village square as he had left it. But when he reached the last bend and looked down, there was nothing. No banyan tree, no huts, no well, no shrine, only an open field. Wild grasses moved in slow rhythm with the wind. No footprints remained, no well may. No well footprints remained, no well may / no world. No weld / no well / no well / no well / no. There was nothing, no well banyan tree, no well / no weld. No well / no well / no well / weld, /well / well. Ruins, not even the bones of buildings. The land was smooth, untouched, as though no one had ever lived there, as though he had never been there. Ananda stood motionless. He was not afraid. He did not doubt his memory. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, like a listener trying to catch the tail end of a song that had just ended. But there was no song, only breath, only sky, only this. He walked forward, gently parting the tall grass with his palms, where the well had once been. He found a patch of moss, warm underfoot, where the banyan tree had once stood. There was only open air and a single stone, rounded and smooth, like the back of a sleeping animal. He sat there, no effort, no hesitation, as if the land itself had offered a cushion. He looked up. The sun had not yet risen. The sky was still deciding what it wanted to become, and he realized something. He was not alone, not in the usual sense. There were no people, no animals, no gods, but there was a presence, not separate, not watching, not whispering, just being. And he was part of it. He remembered a line from the pages he'd read: "Nothing is ever truly gone. It only stops needing to be seen." And suddenly it made sense. The village had not disappeared. It had fulfilled its purpose. Its teaching was done. Its form had fallen away, like the sound of a bell lingering only in the silence that follows. Ananda closed his eyes. He placed his hands, palms up, on his knees. He did not chant. He did not think. He only allowed the space around him to enter, through breath, through skin, through no door. For a long time he sat like that. He did not know how long. It did not matter. Time, like the village, had completed its shape. What remained was not waiting. It was presence without object. Eventually, the sun broke the horizon, not suddenly, not with drama, but gently, like someone returning, home without needing to knock. Its warmth touched his face. He smiled, not as a man who had found something, but as one who had finally stopped searching. A bird landed nearby, looked at him, then flew off, just that, and it was perfect in the distance. The wind changed direction. He rose, not because he had somewhere to go, but because the moment had moved, and he would move with it. He took one last glance at the empty field. It did not feel like an ending. It felt like a bow dot, and he returned it. The wind came from the west now. It stirred the tall grass behind Ananda as he walked away from the field that had once been a village. He did not look back. There was nothing to remember, and yet everything that mattered had stayed, not in the mind, but in the marrow. His steps were lighter now, not because his body had grown stronger, but because the weight of needing to know had fallen away. He no longer needed to name the path. He walked without destination, without question, just the soft rhythm of feet meeting earth. By midday, he reached a fork in the road. One branch led toward the mountains, the other into a small grove of fig trees. There he saw 3 travelers resting beneath the shade. They looked up as he approached a young man with a staff, a woman holding a child, and an older monk with robes much newer than his. The elder monk stood and bowed. Ananda returned the bow with grace. "Peace to you, friend," the monk said. "Do you come from the north?" Ananda paused, then smiled. He gestured gently behind him and said, "I come from where things are no longer." The monk blinked, confused. The young man tilted his head. The woman offered a quiet smile, as if she understood, or didn't need to. The child simply stared. UNBLINKNG.ANANDA sat with them under the fig tree. No story was told, no lesson offered, no lesson offered, no scripture quoted. They shared water from a skin, a few berries from a pouch, and when it was time, they stood together, each bowed in silence and parted. No names exchanged, no promises, just presence. Ananda continued walking, the sky now a soft gold above him, the earth warmed beneath. Birds called out from somewhere unseen. A stream whispered to itself beyond a bend in the path. His breath moved gently, like a prayer that didn't need words. Later, as dusk folded the world into shadow, he reached a small rise. From its crest, he could see a wide plain, open, waiting, and above it all, a single star, already visible. He stopped, closed his eyes, and stood still. There was no revelation, no echo of the bowl, no return of the child. Only this, the quiet certainty that he carried nothing and lacked nothing. And that was enough. He whispered, softly, "Let the next step not be mine, but simply the next step." Then he walked on and did not stop.